Hello everyone, it's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland Reviewer, and welcome to the Wasteland. And this is episode 2 of my new series last week, focusing on the debut feature of the Coen brothers, and we're going to be continuing that Coen brothers train this week as we talk about their second feature, Raising Arizona. And such a quirky and funny and absolutely zany and ridiculous comedy starring Nicolas Cage. And to break down a little bit of what we're going to be going over this week, so we start off as always with coming attractions, and we're going to be talking about the one film that I'm most excited about, most anticipated coming out the weekend that this airs. And then we go into talking about the feature film of the week, and then wrapping things up with some Q&A. Have one question that I received from Instagram and also one that I threw in because as of this, this will be airing on February 19th. I want to talk a little bit about some romance films, seeing as Valentine's Day was the previous weekend. So we have this set up, so let's get started. Looking at this weekend for February 19th, there's quite a few films that are coming out, and it seems like right now there seems to be a decent list of films that are coming out each week. And taking a look at what we have for this week, there's a couple different films. I know we're looking at Blythe Spirit, which is a IFC film with Dan Stevens, which I got a chance to screen. We have I Care a Lot, which is a Netflix film. And we have The Mauritanian, which is starring Jodie Foster and Benedict Cumberbatch and Shailene Woodley about one particular prisoner at Guantanamo Bay Prison. Not getting the greatest reviews, but the one film that I'm most excited about coming out on Hulu is Nomadland. And this is a film that I've been anticipating for a long time. Been so excited waiting for this film to come out. It was one of the biggest films towards the end of 2020, getting a lot of awards consideration, a lot of buzz around lead actress Frances McDormand, who is one of the best actors in general working today. And after getting that second Oscar for her performance in Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, is she going to make it a three-peat to go along with Fargo as well, which we'll be talking about on the show in probably a few weeks. And you have this film, which takes place after the Great Recession, a lot of people losing their homes, and Frances McDormand plays basically a nomad. You have a lot of like actual people who are experiencing things starring in this film, playing exaggerated versions, maybe not so exaggerated versions of themselves. And the story about a woman embarking on a journey through the American West, living as a van dwelling modern day nomad, seems like it could be an interesting situation for plenty of drama and a very humanistic approach. You have David Strathairn, who is a fantastic character actor, who's basically the only like named actor besides McDormand who's in this film. And this is from director Chloe Zhao, who her film The Rider is fantastic. It is a beautiful, emotional little film. And she also has her Marvel film Eternals coming out maybe this year. You never know at this point. But she definitely has Nomadland coming out, and I'm super excited for this one. I want to see how great Zhao's direction is, and I want to see how great Frances McDormand's performance is, as she's getting a lot of buzz at all the award shows for it. So those are your coming attractions for this week, and now we're going to be focusing on our feature of the week, Raising Arizona. So what is Raising Arizona about? You have H.I. High, played by Nicolas Cage, who's this redneck, just con artist who keeps holding up convenience stores in different places and keeps getting arrested. And every time he goes in, he has this like small, wiry little cop played by Holly Hunter, Ed, who's the one, she's the police photographer taking his picture. And, they flirt. He winds up in jail. He's reformed. He gets out, gets thrown back in jail, flirts a little bit more with her. And over time, they just hit it off. And they wind up getting married. And that is how the stage is set for Raising Arizona. And unfortunately, Ed finds out that she cannot have kids. So what are they going to do? They're going to kidnap one of the children of the quintuplets from the Arizona family who we have Nathan Arizona, who runs this big company in Arizona, and they kidnap one of the kids, and zaniness ensues. And this film, which I remember seeing comments from Edgar Wright, who's a huge fan of this film, talking about how this zany, just redneck look at Arizona is crazy. It's hilarious. And this film definitely captures the absurd nature of humor that the Coen brothers can really muster in their films, because it's that oddball humor that they really get from the 1940s, and it's a big influence on them. And it pops up in films like this, in Intolerable Cruelty, Lady Killers. Some of these films do it a lot better than others. And the Coen brothers really have those two different kinds of films. You have their zany, weird, quirky comedies and dark comedies, and then you have their little more serious, darker kinds of films that, at their darkest, is No Country for Old Men. At their darkest humor is Fargo. But you have films, and like you have like The Big Lebowski's, that's like the quintessential comedy for me, which is also a noir, like PI film, which is really interesting. This film is just a quirky, zany, oddball comedy focusing on like Nicolas Cage. I feel like there's two kinds of people in this world that think that there's people who think that Nick Cage is overrated, just this ridiculous, terrible actor. And then there's those that believe he is some kind of genius. I'm on the end where he's some kind of genius because he's a really talented actor. Yes, some of the films you can tell he just took these films and just sleptwalked through them. You could also tell some of these films that he was in a completely other movie. And I feel like Vampire's Kiss is a good example because, like, is this supposed to be like a serious, like, mental health thing? And he's just going all out. And here, Nick Cage he's a character, but he reins in his performance. You don't see like the Nick Cage like yelling and like kind of thing. You get more of he's a restrained performance, but he's a character. He has that obnoxious accent. It's very thick, and he spits like these poetic ideals of what life is and what love is in his head with some of his voiceovers, and that's great. His voiceovers in this film work so well. All the way up to the climax of the film where he's talking about these dreams that he's having about if Ed and him are going to work it out after all the craziness that happens in this film. And it's beautiful and it's genuine. And High is very genuine. And you can tell he wants to get better. He is not and like, whenever things get tough, he leans back on that con man nature, that thief nature of himself. And he really does want to put that behind him because he loves Ed so much. And the chemistry between Holly Hunter and Nick Cage is great. They really work well together. And they make for an interesting pairing. And you have High with just this look, the terrible mustache, disheveled hair, hairy chest coming out with like the Hawaiian shirt on. And then Ed's very much like this like fast talking Holly Hunter kind of type of character. And she always like talks out the side of her mouth kind of thing. And she like even the moments where she finds out that she's barren and she's just bawling her eyes out and everything's so exaggerated in this film. It works so well within the realm of this. And you have all these great character actors peppered through. Like Frances McDormand has a small role in this film. And you have M. Emmett Walsh, who was the main antagonist of his last, like their feature debut, as just like this fast talking, storytelling guy who pops up for a couple, like maybe a minute or two at the factory that High works at when he's out of prison. And then just the cast in general, like I already talked about Hunter and I talked about Cage. And then you have all these different characters like Trey Wilson. doesn't get enough credit for playing Nathan Arizona. He is like he looks like a guy who makes a lot of money owning a bunch of businesses. Because like you have these big CEO like businessmen, and then you have those guys that are like those self-made businessmen that own a whole bunch of chains or something, and you would see them on TV. Trey Wilson does such a great job of being this Nathan Arizona, and like and it's just so great in his performance. And then here's the thing. You have John Goodman and William Forsythe as these two criminals who befriend High in prison. They escape, which this is how absurd this movie is. They dig themselves up in a crazy rainstorm. Like, and this was even before Shawshank happened, where like you have Andy Dufresne, like the rain and it was like wash him away. And they come up out of this mud. They're covered in mud in the rain, and they're just like, ah! Like yelling as they pull themselves out of the ground. And I don't think there's a better actor that can play larger than life than John Goodman, because like look at this man. He is larger than life, and he is a perfect slimy con man in this. And him and William Forsythe have such great chemistry, and this was well before Forsythe was playing like those hardened like tough guy roles. And like having seen him recently, like I'm watching Boardwalk Empire, he's in that. Or like very recently he was in that Liam Neeson movie about like he's a plowman and his son dies of what from this like getting involved in this drug ring and stuff like that. And like William Forsythe is like the softer one of the two, and you can tell John Goodman's the one in charge. And they just play such great over the top roles, and they have such great chemistry together. And then you have Randall Tex Cobb as Leonard Smalls, the biker of the apocalypse. Which that's the crazy thing about this film is there is absurd craziness in this film, and like this vision that High has of this, and like how Nick Cage delivers this is so poetic, his dialogue and like the music and the effects. This is giant fireball on screen, and then this biker just drives through it, and Cobb as his Leonard Smalls character is just so gritty, like right out of like the Road Warrior. And like he throws a grenade and blows up a bunny and then shoots a lizard with his sawed-off shotgun. And I'm just like, what is this? And it's so over the top, but this movie is so over exaggerated in every aspect that it feels like it fits so well and such a cohesive tone to it. And even like the small roles of like the people in the place that Forsythe and Goodman try to rob at the end of the film, they are all sassy and sorry, and then they rob a convenience store. And like the Coen brothers know how to make a clerk, cast a clerk at a convenience store. No Country for Old Men, Raising Arizona. Every performance is pitch perfect and exactly what they need for the film. And then you have the filmmaking. This is zany, it's exaggerated, it's very colorful and bold in the way that it's shot. And the camera angles, there's a lot of wide lenses. There's a lot of that shaky cam, like the running with the board thing. And it feels so much like High's like running with like the diapers through the streets away from the cops and everything. And like every cop like pointing their gun at the screen, their gun looks like this big, looks like a cartoon gun. And that's what this film really feels like, a Roadrunner cartoon in real life. And that's not like a slight to say like this is childish and cartoonish. It's so it captures that like Looney Tunes energy so well in a mature setting of like a live action film that it just works so well to making this film so much fun. And you have everything working for it. You have Barry Sonnenfeld's cinematography, which is like those extreme wide close-ups, those like absurd just quick cuts and long takes, and just how everything comes together and makes this surrealist look to things. And it was so impressive because you know when he goes on to make like the Addams Family and directs that, he brings that visual style, and you have that exaggerated look on the world because the Adams do. And you have that same kind of exaggerated look on the world in Raising Arizona. And then you have Carter Burwell's score. The yodeling is perfect. Who, if that's Carter Burwell's idea, cheers to you, sir, because whoever thought of putting yodeling in the score for this, just like a yodeling cowboy kind of yodel. And it just works so well to capture the tone and the vibe of this whole film. And like along the way, you care about Hi and Ed. And then you like this baby has such an influence on people. It makes them better people. It makes like John Goodman and William Forsythe's characters don't get better, but it actually gives them a conscience and makes them think like we care about this baby, and like they do care about the baby, and adds another layer to their characters. And you have this just the dialogue is sharp and funny and snappy at every single moment. This film works on so many different levels, and you have just the absurd, bonkers silliness about it. And it all comes together in such an earnest way that you're sitting and watching this film and really thinking, I have so much fun with this. And it never, like, what could happen is that it's making fun of these kinds of people. But everything feels so earnest that these just feel like people and you care about them. And like I could see people saying like this is a absurd like slight on like rednecks and people out west and stuff like that, but like you care for these people. And yeah, they're different, and they're definitely different than somebody like an Italian American who grew up in New Jersey like myself, but I cared about them and I felt for them. I wanted Hi to succeed. I wanted him and Ed to work out, and the performances are great. The filmmaking is perfect and just zany. And everything in this film works to the same goal, which is why that singularity of like score, the music, the filmmaking, the cinematography, the acting is all raised to a certain level and aiming at a certain level of campiness, that it all comes together so well and works to that same very point that you look at this film and you realize, here you go. This is a great experience. This is a zany, just wonderful good time. And you sit there thinking, I'm enjoying this every single moment. And I laugh. There's some intense moments. You have like these shootouts, like Hi runs in and they wants to get diapers, but he decides to steal it instead. But like the convenience store clerk has a gun. And then one of the craziest like yodeling scored segments in this film is him running through the streets, hopping in this car, trying to get away from the cops, trying to get away from this clerk, going into a grocery store, running up and down the lanes of the grocery store, the aisles, and like this woman like getting in the way, the exaggerated camera work where they're like screaming and like it's wide shot so it looks exaggerated, like she's running for her life and like dodging these bullets, and everything just clicks so well. And it's a crazy cartoon brought to life. And then you have the climax of the film where Smalls comes blow to blow with Hi, this really intimidating character in an otherwise silly film filled of not quite idiots, but like not people that are like truly malicious. They all have self-serving perspectives in many ways, but none of them are truly malicious, except then you have Leonard Smalls. And him going blow to blow with Hi and him winning this by pulling one of the pins on his grenade and he just exaggerated, like just blows up, is a perfect way to wrap this up. And you have that moment where they bring the baby back and have this really special moment with Nathan Arizona Sr. And you're just sitting there enjoying this warm, lovely moment because you could tell, just like Nathan Arizona does, how much they love each other, Hi and Ed. And Cage and Holly Hunter really carry this film from start to finish with their fantastic performances. Obviously, Cage, who is very much the central character here. You get his narration, you get this earnest performance, and This is just a fun, quirky, zany film. And if you haven't seen Raising Arizona, please check it out. It's so much fun. But those are my thoughts on Raising Arizona. So that's the film for this week. Next week, we're going to be talking about the Coen brothers' next film, Miller's Crossing, which is honestly one of their most serious films. Like, it even has less laughs than, say, No Country for Old Men, because, like, even though No Country for Old Men is probably darker, there's also some great humor in it peppered through. This is probably one of their most serious, straightforward kinds of films, and it's very much a prohibition era, just gangster movie, which is a very interesting turn. And you could definitely see the influences that had on what they've done in some of the seasons of the Fargo show, which is based off of obviously the film Fargo. But I look forward to chatting about that. Now it's the Q&A section of the show where I have a couple of questions I'm going to talk about. So I did get one question from my friend Kristen, Miss Filmingo. Favorite underappreciated movie. So I wanted to try to figure out how to take this question specifically. So I had two answers to this. If you're thinking about a film that doesn't have the best like critical response, but you love, I always seem to go back to The Accountant. And the reason I do is because I think it has like a 50 something on Rotten Tomatoes. And I think that's really unfair for this film because what I appreciate so much about this, you have director Gavin O'Connor, who's a fantastic, talented director with films like Warrior and The Way Back that he just had with Ben Affleck last year. They work together for the first time with this film. And Ben Affleck is on the autism spectrum. He's an accountant by day and like this hitman by night, which seems like an absurd idea, but I feel like, and especially as like I do not work in the field of like working with people who are on the autism spectrum, but my significant other is a BCBA, so I hear a lot about it. I feel like this film does a lot to present like stimming and social interactions in a respectful way. And yeah, it's a little outrageous. Like this character is like this super accountant by day and can do all these things and like writing all over this giant room with all these accounts and stuff like that in one night. And then also this like ridiculously trained assassin. But I think it's respectful in that manner. But it also is well directed, intense, has some great action. Ben Affleck is intense, great performance. I enjoy Anna Kendrick in it, even though she probably doesn't have the most to do in it. And you have like J.K. Simmons and John Bernthal is fantastic in this film. You have other actors like Jeffrey Tambor and John Lithgow who pop up in it in these supporting roles. But this film in general is so great. And this isn't like a masterpiece of a film, but it's something that I definitely think doesn't deserve to just be like these middling reviews. I think my biggest issue with the film was there is a really big section of the film that J.K. Simmons just dumping exposition that took me out of the film. But the rest of it, I feel like moves well, is sharply directed, and has a great visual style and intensity. And I think The Accountant's a cool film, and I definitely recommend it to people. Now, underappreciated as in I don't think enough people have seen it and give it enough credit, Brooklyn. I love that film so much. And Brooklyn is a little period romance that, yes, it's about romance, but at the core of it is about the immigrant experience and focuses on this young woman, Ailish, who played it by Saoirse Ronan, which if any of you have ever watched any of my reviews of films with Saoirse Ronan in it know that I love Saoirse Ronan. And this is from director John Crowley, who has did this film, has done like The Goldfinch, wasn't the hugest fan of. He's worked on True Detective, but like I love Brooklyn. It is a timeless, beautiful film. The period trappings of the film were perfect. And you really captured this wonderful, wonderful performance from Saoirse Ronan as she's trying to make it in America, get over her homesickness, and falls in love with a sweet Italian American named Tony, and played by Emery Cohen. And their relationship is so sweet because like Tony is like just this, he doesn't talk a whole lot, and like he's a like a stereotypical like Italian guy, and he's a blue collar worker. He just loves Ailish, and just there's a special connection there. There's an earnestness about it. He's polite, and like they bring him home to a super Italian family, which is really funny because I could definitely relate to moments like that. And you have this beautiful love story, and then she's whisked back away home to Ireland to deal with the death of her sister, and then she's challenged with all these opportunities back home that she left because there weren't opportunities. And then she's put in this challenging position because she has this bookkeeping job that she could live off of and thrive off of. And then another man comes into her life that promises a great life for her, played by Donald Gleason, who plays Jim Farrell, who is charming and very like proper. And he's very not Tony. And the film shows the differences between their relationships in such a beautiful and well constructed way, in like mirroring scenes to show the different dynamics because they're both very different men, and she's a very different person in each of those relationships. And it's beautiful. It's a beautiful film. And if you haven't seen Brooklyn, please check this out. Show this film some love. And this is a nice transition talking into some of the like romance Valentine. So like I was thinking like, what's my favorite Valentine's movie? And it's funny because my significant other Jess and I, every year that we've been back together, we've been watching each of us pick our favorite romance films to watch. Jess always picks Forgetting Sarah Marshall, favorite rom-com of hers. Love that movie too. We'll be watching it on Valentine's Day. And I always pick The Princess Bride. Film has everything, perfectly everything about it. It has action, it has drama, it has fantasy, it has great dialogue, great characters, wonderful, pure romance, and it's hilarious. And it balances all of it. It's scary, it's funny, it's loving and perfect. And it's like, Grandpa, is this one of those kissing books? He's like, no, shut up and let me read. Just Peter Falk, as wonderful as this grandfather. But yes, it is a kissing book. It is romance. There is romance, but it has everything. And I didn't see Princess Bride until I was in high school. And I wish I had seen it earlier so I could have watched it more growing up because it's such a beautiful, just pure, perfect, fantastic little film. And I love every second of it. I just love, 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 love The Princess Bride. So that definitely answers that question. What's my favorite romance? The movie that I always pick to watch on Valentine's Day, Princess Bride. But those are all of my questions for this week. So I appreciate all of you tuning in and supporting Welcome to the Wasteland. I know this is a new show. Really hope that you comment on the videos, leave some questions for the next show. That'd be great. I'm going to be posting on Instagram to get more questions for next week. I love the interaction. So the more questions I get to answer, the more engaging it's going to be. And also I hope to have some people join the show moving forward to talk about some of these films. So if you are a fan of Miller's Crossing or ever wanted to really watch it and want an excuse, comment, message me on Instagram, let me know, and we can figure something out. But I hope at some point these shows have more engagement with some other people lending their perspectives, because as of right now, you're just stuck with me. Not that I don't like talking about movies. But thank you all for tuning in and always supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.